Now it's time for RTB 101, where we discuss practical questions to equip you to share your faith more effectively. And here to help me talk about a very provocative topic for Easter is medical doctor, Dr. Joseph Bergeron. Welcome, Dr. Bergeron.
Good to be with you.
Now, I know that you've done a lot of research on the crucifixion of Jesus from a medical perspective. We're just going to do a little slice of that today, get a little snapshot of your work. But when you look at the details of the crucifixion as they're described in the Gospels, I'm wondering if you could share one or two things about what you see going on there as being medically accurate.
Well, you know, whenever I read a story or see a movie that has medical content in it, it's immediately obvious to me if it's fabrication or erroneous. When you read the Gospels, it's not like that. The things that you read are medically understandable and explainable. Two things that I'll talk about is one is the sweating of blood that Luke, the physician, records in chapter 22, and that's a phenomenon called hematidrosis, or sweating blood, which is a rare phenomena, and we still don't know exactly why it happens, in spite of a few cases that have been studied in detail, including biopsy. It always occurs in response to anxiety. And with Jesus, he had the rarest form of hematidrosis called single episode psychogenic hematidrosis, which is almost always seen prior to execution. There are only a handful of cases, but it's always prior to execution. The other thing that people wonder about is the stab wound that John describes in chapter 19, where the spear enters Jesus' chest, and it says that there's water and blood that came out. And a lot of people wonder, well, how does that even occur? And how can a dead body bleed? Well, blunt trauma to the chest can cause the lung to collapse and for fluid to collect around the lung. So a spear entering the chest would first encounter clear fluid, and it would look like water. It would then rupture the heart chambers and cause blood to mix with that, which would cause the fluid to look like blood. And when someone dies in a traumatic death like crucifixion, the clot can be unstable, it can reliquefy, and may not be solid as you might suspect that it would be.
So when you look at the trajectory of death by a Roman crucifixion, do you see the gospel description as being accurate? And maybe you can give us a little snapshot into what some of those steps were.
Well, the condemned felon would be scourged, then he would be taken to the crucifixion site. The hands would be nailed to the cross. Now, the nail would be placed if you take your ring finger and place it down at the vertical wrist crease in your hand. If you drive a nail through there, that would create a stable fixation to 250 pounds of extraction. That would be where the nail would be placed. And then the horizontal section of the cross would be lifted and placed on the vertical section, and then the feet nailed, and the victim would hang there until they died. And there are literary references to crucifixion taking several days. With Jesus, he died in 6 hours. Now, that means that there was something physiologically occurring in his body that wasn't obvious. And I would propose that that was traumatic hemorrhagic shock, because the beatings that Jesus took before going to crucifixion, first in the house of Annas and Caiaphas, and then second by the Roman soldiers, started him on a trajectory of traumatic hemorrhagic shock. The cause of death, we would say, is crucifixion. The mechanism of death in medical terms, I would call traumatic hemorrhagic shock.
So as we think about Easter, which is right around the corner, the crucifixion is a hard thing to reflect on. It's a very brutal way to die, torturous way to be killed. What do you think their value is for the Christian to reflect on the crucifixion in this way?
Well, it's the ground zero of Christianity, and it redefined God's relationship with humans. Jesus at the Last Supper took the blood, or took a cup, and he said, "This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for the remission of sins." So I think he told us three things there. He said that my blood is poured out. So I think when I read that after studying for several years, I thought, oh my gosh, he's telling us his cause of death. He bled to death. It was traumatic hemorrhagic shock. And that was the mechanism by which forgiveness came to humanity. And he inaugurated the new covenant, which redefined God's relationship with humanity, where God said he would recreate the human heart and that he would forgive our sins and not remember them.
What a great message for us to think about at Easter. Thank you, Dr. Bergeron, for helping us think through this very important issue. And I want to invite all our viewers to go check out Dr. Bergeron's blog that he wrote for us. You can go to reasons.org and search for Crucifixion.